When Derek Sullivan opened his front door to show his sister the life he'd built, he never imagined she'd steal his keys and say, "Thanks for the house." What started as a family reunion spiraled into a nightmare of lies, forged deeds, and a plan to steal everything he owned.
I remember the exact shade of the front door the day I painted it. Midnight blue. It wasn't some grand design decision. I just wanted something different from the sea of HOA beige boxes in the neighborhood. My house, our house, wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Mine and Megan's, really. Took us 9 years of saving, sacrificing every unnecessary purchase, and a relentless grind to finally sign those papers and hold that brass key in my hand. $320,000. 30-year mortgage. Not a penny came from anyone else. Blood, sweat, electrical burns, and a lot of sleepless nights. I'm Derek Sullivan, 42 years old, small business owner, licensed electrician, father to a 3-year-old hurricane named Ethan, and husband to the most stubbornly brilliant woman I know. Megan married me 5 years ago, knowing I didn't come with generational wealth or clean family history, just calloused hands and the promise I'd build something real. 8 months ago, we bought this house in a quiet corner of suburban Ohio. Not fancy, but solid. I'd been rewiring houses for 15 years and running my own crew of 6 for 12. Everything about this place was earned. I wanted Ethan to grow up with what I never had: stability, space, and a yard where the grass didn't double as a landfill. Funny how even the best moments in life come with shadows, though. Hers came back with a phone call. It was a Thursday. I was elbow-deep in a breaker box, covered in sweat and drywall dust, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I let those go, but something, some instinct, made me answer. "Derek?" A pause. "It's me, Rachel. I'm out." I didn't speak, couldn't. It had been 13 years. I wanted to see you, if you'd let me." Her voice was thinner than I remembered, slower. I hung up without saying anything, sat in the truck with the AC blasting my face until my hands stopped shaking. Megan wasn't thrilled when I told her. That's putting it gently. She's a con artist, Derek. Your sister is a walking felony with highlights. What does she want now? I don't know. Maybe nothing. She never wants nothing. I couldn't argue. Rachel and I were raised in the same house, but came out as different species. I started working at 16, put myself through trade school at night, started my company at 30. She, meanwhile, took the express lane to hell. By 25, she was president of an HOA. By 27, she was embezzling from it. And by 35, she was convicted of stealing over $1 million from her own neighbors. Mom had a stroke, Dad got cancer, and when we begged her for help, she had money, real money back then, she said, "Their suffering isn't my problem." They chose to be poor. I buried both of them within a year, sold their house to cover the medical debt. She didn't even show up to the funeral. I showed up to her sentencing, not out of support, but to understand how someone I shared a roof with could be that hollow. And now she was out. I didn't want to tell her where I lived, but she already knew. Of course she did. We met at a diner halfway between nowhere and awkward silence. She looked older. Prison aged her, and not gracefully. Gray roots, hollow cheeks, tired skin stretched over bones and bitterness. But when she saw me, her eyes watered. "I'm so sorry, Derek. I was awful. For everything. For what I did. To you. To them." I didn't say anything, just stared. It was like trying to hold a conversation with a ghost, one you weren't sure you missed. I understand if you hate me, she whispered, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. I just wanted to see my brother once, to say I know I ruined everything, and I'll never ask you for anything. I swear. I wish I could say I walked away, that I told her to rot, but I didn't, because some part of me, some broken, rusted loyalty, still saw my little sister, the one who used to sneak me the last cookie, the one who used to draw lightning bolts on my notebooks and call me Thunderhead. So I made a decision. You want to see how I live now? I asked. Just to see it. That's all. She nodded, grateful. I brought her home. Megan was at work. Ethan was at daycare. It was just me and Rachel, pulling into the driveway of the only piece of earth I'd ever truly owned. She stepped out and stared at the house for a long time. The porch swing, the maple tree, the chalk drawings on the walkway Ethan made last weekend. Damn, she breathed. You did it. I unlocked the door and let her inside. She moved slowly, reverently, like walking through a museum she once dreamed about. Her fingers brushed the kitchen counter, the fridge covered in finger-painted animals, the ceiling fan I installed myself. Spare rooms through there, I said without thinking. You can crash a couple nights, just until you figure out your next move. She turned to me, eyes wide. You serious? Just a couple nights. She smiled, and for a moment I almost believed it was gratitude. Almost. 3 days. That's how long it took for everything to go sideways. The first night, Rachel barely said a word. She went to bed early in the guest room, door closed. The second day, she offered to do the dishes after dinner and even read Ethan a bedtime story. Megan kept her distance, eyes like razors every time Rachel entered a room, but she didn't say anything. Not in front of Ethan. We were trying to keep the peace. By the third morning, I started to think maybe I was wrong about her. Maybe prison really had changed something, or broken something that needed to be broken. She didn't seem angry anymore, just tired, sad, small. That illusion lasted until I got home from work on day 4 and found her on my living room couch, legs stretched across the coffee table, drinking my beer and watching daytime court shows like she owned the place. She looked up, casual as hell. Hey, you're back early. I finished a job ahead of schedule, I said, dropping my tool bag. What are you doing? Watching this judge rip a deadbeat dad a new one. Want to join? No, I mean, what are you still doing here? I thought you'd be checking out housing options. She shrugged. I've been thinking. This place is kinda perfect. Maybe I'll stay a little longer. I froze. No, I said. We agreed. A couple nights. Yeah, and nights become mornings, and mornings become life, she said, like she was quoting some damn greeting card. Come on, Derek. You've got 3 bedrooms. One's a damn linen closet. I'm not in your way. I walked over and turned off the TV. Her smile flattened. You can't stay here, I said. This isn't a halfway house. You need to find your own place. That's when Megan came in from the hallway, arms crossed, voice sharp. She's leaving tomorrow. You said 2 nights, and this is 4. She's not staying another day. Rachel didn't even flinch. Just looked at her with that old, oily calm I remembered from years ago. Oh, Megan, I forgot how warm you were. I'm not here to be warm. I'm here to protect my home. And my son. And right now, you're a threat to both. Rachel stood up. Not aggressive, just deliberate. I'm not going anywhere, she said quietly. Legally speaking, I've already established residence. You'd have to formally evict me now. Takes 30 days in Ohio. You can check. I blinked. What are you talking about? She smiled again. That goddamn smile. I've been here over 72 hours. Under Ohio tenant law, That gives me certain rights, even without a lease. You want to get rid of me? Start the paperwork. File a notice to vacate. Wait 30 days. And hey, maybe, just maybe, I'll feel like leaving after that. I laughed. A single, bitter, stunned laugh. You planned this, I said. Don't flatter yourself. I planned nothing. But when life hands you lemons, you squeeze them into other people's eyes. Megan stepped forward. If you think for 1 second we're going to let you bully us in our own house, Rachel cut her off, calm as hell. I'm not your problem, sweetheart. I'm Derek's sister. This is family business. I'm his wife. This is our home. Rachel's tone turned ice cold. And yet, you're the only one here who didn't grow up in this family, so maybe sit this one out. That was it. I raised my hand. Enough. You're not staying. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. You want to make this ugly? Fine. But you're leaving. Rachel walked over to the fridge, grabbed another beer, popped it open like it was a Tuesday barbecue. Do what you have to do, brother, she said. But until then, I'll take the room with the better window. She walked down the hallway like she'd just signed the mortgage. Megan looked at me like I'd personally invited a rabid wolf to live in the nursery. And maybe I had. I called an attorney the next morning. He confirmed every horrible thing Rachel said was true. No lease, no consent, no payment, didn't matter. She'd crossed the 72-hour threshold. Now she was a guest tenant, and under Ohio law, we had to file formal notice and wait 30 days. You're telling me she has legal rights to my home just because I let her stay 3 nights? She doesn't own it, the attorney said. But she's protected from being kicked out without notice. File the paperwork. Clock starts ticking today. I hung up and told Megan. She just stood there, arms folded, like she was holding the roof up with pure spite. Later that night, I walked past the guest room and saw Rachel talking on her phone in hushed tones, flipping through a notepad, writing something down. I heard her say the words square footage and property line. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what she was planning yet, but I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The first stranger showed up on a Tuesday afternoon while I was rewiring a bakery across town. Megan called me, voice shaking. There's a man in our driveway asking if the house is still for sale. I laughed, because the alternative was throwing my phone through a glass display case. What do you mean, for sale? He has printouts, Derek, floor plans, photos. He says he's here to see the property with your sister. I was in my truck 10 minutes later, breaking more speed limits than I care to remember. When I pulled up, a silver sedan was parked in front of my mailbox, and a guy in a polo shirt was standing on my lawn, staring at the house like it already belonged to him. Rachel was on the porch, smiling like a realtor on commission. This is my brother, she said when I stormed up. He's just surprised. Family stuff. The man stuck out his hand. Hi, I'm Ben. Rachel told me she's handling the sale. We've been emailing all week. Sale of what? I asked. Our house, Rachel said smoothly. I told him we're considering options. I told Ben there was no sale, no listing, and definitely no permission for anyone to tour my property. His face went from eager to confused to quietly angry in about 5 seconds. He left without shaking my hand. I confronted Rachel in the kitchen. She didn't deny anything. You're under a mortgage, she said. You're buried in payments. I thought maybe you'd appreciate help. Help doesn't involve lying to buyers. Relax, it was just a showing. But it wasn't just one. Over the next week, people kept appearing. Couples, a woman with a clipboard, a man who said he'd already wired a deposit. Always when I wasn't home. Megan started locking herself in the bedroom with Ethan whenever the doorbell rang. One night, Megan went digging through the trash. That's where she found them. Contracts, sale templates, a printed deed with my name on it. Only the signature wasn't mine. It was close, though. Too close. Close enough to fool someone who wanted to believe. I took everything to my attorney the next morning. He barely skimmed the papers before his face darkened. "These are forged," he said. "And she's not just pretending to sell your house. She's trying to actually transfer it." I asked how far she'd gotten. He pulled up a county database. There was already a preliminary filing under her name. Not ownership, but a breadcrumb. Enough to confuse banks and buyers. By the time I got home that evening, Megan had found more. A burner phone in Rachel's room, a notebook full of addresses and prices, and an email chain with a so-called real estate assistant who didn't exist in any licensing system. Rachel came home while we were standing in her room, surrounded by the evidence. "You shouldn't snoop," she said, not even embarrassed. "You tried to sell my house," I said. She leaned against the door frame. "You're emotional." "That's understandable." "You forged my signature." "Signatures are just lines on paper, Derek. Houses are just wood and debt. You act like this place is your soul." It was the first time I understood she wasn't desperate. She was hungry. She'd crossed the line. And not just morally. Legally. My attorney confirmed what I already felt deep in my gut. Rachel wasn't just playing squatters' games anymore. She was orchestrating a full-blown scam. I'd invited her in, and she was using every inch of ground I gave her to steal everything under my roof. The paperwork we found was enough to file a formal police report. We drove to the precinct together, Megan clutching a manila envelope like it was a live grenade. I explained the situation: forged documents, fake listings, unauthorized showings. The officer taking our statement raised an eyebrow when I said the fraudster was my sister. "She currently living with you?" he asked. "She's currently squatting with me," I said, "and trying to sell my damn house out from under me." He promised they'd open a case and assigned it to a detective in economic crimes. I walked out of that building with the illusion of control again. I thought we'd finally turned the tide. Then the van showed up. It was the next day, early evening, just after dinner. Megan was cleaning up in the kitchen. I was on the floor with Ethan, playing with building blocks, when we heard tires grind to a stop outside. I looked through the window and saw a large, dark green van idling in front of the driveway. The sliding door opened, and two men got out. One of them was Vince. The other, I didn't know. Tattoos on his neck. They didn't knock. They didn't ring the bell. They just strolled up onto the porch, like they lived there. Rachel met them at the door. "This is Vince," she said. "Old friend. He's helping me with something." I stepped in immediately. "No, absolutely not. No more guests. Not after what you've pulled." Vince didn't flinch. "We won't be long. Just got business to discuss." Megan grabbed Ethan and headed to the back room without a word. I could see the look in her eyes. This wasn't just discomfort. It was fear. "This is my house," I said, "and you're trespassing." Rachel smiled, eyes sharp. "Technically, they're my guests, and I still live here. You haven't evicted me yet, remember?" I called the police right in front of them. Told dispatch there were unknown individuals refusing to leave my private property. As soon as they heard police, Vince and the other guy turned and walked right back to the van without a word. No threats, no shouting, just silence. That was worse. By the time officers arrived, the van was gone. I gave them the footage from the porch camera. They told me it would be documented, but couldn't do much unless the men returned or committed a crime on camera. So Rachel stayed. Like mold you couldn't scrub off. Later that night, I checked the footage again. Just before Vince left, he turned toward the doorbell cam and smirked. That little smirk. As if he was saying, "This isn't over." It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was math. Rachel had tried to forge her way into a property sale, and now she had muscle. I changed the locks again, even though the lawyer warned me it wouldn't hold. Installed new motion-activated floodlights, upgraded the alarm system, and started sleeping with my phone on my chest. That weekend, I came home from a job and found Rachel in the driveway, alone this time, leaning against my work van. She was smoking, which was already enough to piss me off, but it was the way she looked at me that stopped me cold. Pity. "You're making this so hard on yourself," she said. "Excuse me?" "You should have just let go. Could have made it clean. Could have walked away with something instead of nothing." I stepped closer. "This house is mine. I worked for every inch of it. Every screw, every payment, every busted knuckle on those damn walls. You're not getting it. Not an inch, not a damn tile of it." She flicked the cigarette onto the ground, crushed it under her boot. "You sure?" That night, I set up extra cameras around the van, double locks on the garage. I couldn't sleep. Neither could Megan. We took turns staying up, watching monitors, jumping at every car door slamming in the distance. And then came the crash. It was around 2:30 in the morning. The sound of glass shattering, metal screeching, and a sharp bang that reverberated through the house. I grabbed the bat from under the bed and ran barefoot outside. Two shadows were moving around my van, crowbars in hand. The windshield was cracked, side door half open. I didn't hesitate. "Hey!" I yelled. Vince turned around, crowbar raised. "Back off, Derek. You don't want this." "Get away from my van," I said, stepping forward. The other guy lunged first. I swung the bat, hit metal, then flesh. Chaos. Someone hit my shoulder hard. Felt like a sledgehammer. I stumbled, rolled, swung again. Vince dodged and swung low. I kicked him back. One of them slipped on spilled coolant, slammed into the driveway. I didn't stop swinging until I heard sirens. Neighbors had called. Within minutes, blue and red lights lit up the night. They took me to the ER. Fractured shoulder, bruises, stitches. The other guy, Marco, apparently, broke his knee when he fell. Vince ran, but the cops picked him up an hour later, 2 blocks away. Rachel? She was already back in the house when the cops knocked, wrapped in a robe, pretending to be asleep. They processed Vince and Marco separately. That's what the detective told me when he came to the hospital the next day. Said that was usually enough to make the smart one talk first. Turns out, they were both pretty dumb, but not dumb enough to take the fall for someone like Rachel. They flipped on her fast. Vince cracked after 10 minutes. Said Rachel paid them each $1,000. Said the plan was just to scare me off the property, make me rethink keeping the house. Marco confirmed the same, though he added she gave him a little extra for being the one to cut the brake lines if it came to that. That part hit me like ice water. Brake lines. Ethan rides in that van. They weren't just messing around anymore. This was real. This was attempted destruction, maybe worse. Detectives got a warrant before the sun came up. They raided my house at 5:30 in the morning. I wasn't there. I was still in the ER with my arm in a sling and my dignity taped together. But Megan called me, voice shaky but proud. "She was still in bed," she whispered. "Didn't even get to finish her coffee." Officers pulled her out in handcuffs. Rachel didn't fight, didn't scream, just walked out in her robe, hair messy, face blank. The same look she wore at her sentencing 13 years ago. Inside the guest room, they found everything they needed. Megan had packed up most of her stuff the night before, but Rachel had unpacked new things. Things we didn't even know were in the house. Printouts of my bank statements. She'd somehow found a way into our shared office drawer. Copies of my driver's license, Megan's ID, our mortgage contract, partially retyped and annotated, even the spare key fob to my truck, which I hadn't seen in weeks. And then there was the journal. She'd been writing everything down. Handwritten pages filled with bitter rants, lists of assets, future plans, and little motivational notes like, "You're smarter than him. You always were." One page stopped my breath cold. Derek always had it easy. Daddy loved him more. Mommy babied him. He thinks he's better than me because he worked with his hands. But I had vision. I took what I deserved. And now I'll take this house, this family. I'll be better than him. I'll sell this dump and head south. New name, new life. I earned that. She hadn't changed. Not in prison, not out of it. The apology at the diner, the tears, that was all theater. A calculated performance. I didn't let her back into my life. I got cast in a play I didn't audition for, and I damn near lost everything because of it. The detective said Rachel had violated multiple conditions of her parole, associating with known felons, orchestrating a criminal act, committing fraud, and theft. Add conspiracy and intent to defraud a financial institution, and she was looking at a serious sentence. They held her without bail. The prosecutor offered to keep us updated, but honestly, I didn't want updates. I just wanted to go home. Only home didn't feel the same anymore. Every room felt touched, violated. I started second-guessing what else she might have done. Had she copied our Wi-Fi passwords, forwarded our mail, changed our account settings? Megan and I spent days changing locks, freezing credit, talking to Ethan in careful words. "Where's Aunt Rachel?" he asked one morning. "She had to leave," Megan said. "She wasn't safe to be around." He blinked, nodded, and went back to his cereal like it was just another cartoon plot twist. The resilience of kids is beautiful and terrifying. But we weren't okay. Not really. I'd walk into the kitchen and see her leaning on the counter like she did that first week. I'd hear Megan's footsteps upstairs and tense, thinking it was Rachel stomping down to argue. The house echoed different now. Not with voices, but with caution. And then the news vans showed up. Someone at the courthouse tipped off a local station. First it was one van, then two. Then a morning show anchor wanted an exclusive. The story practically wrote itself. Ex-con attempts to steal brother's home in twisted real estate scam. We tried to keep quiet, but the neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Rachel's mugshot made the rounds. So did a photo of me from my old electrician business page. Helmet, gloves, tired smile. The contrast was cinematic. Eventually, I agreed to one interview. Not because I wanted to be on TV, but because I was tired of being part of a story I wasn't telling. They set up a camera crew in the driveway. I wore a plain polo and tried not to sweat through it. The reporter was gentle but direct. "What made you trust her after all these years?" I thought for a second. "She cried," I said, "and I wanted to believe they were real tears. That's on me." The segment aired 2 nights later. Megan and I watched it together, holding hands on the couch. I looked tired, hollow, but honest. They ended it with a slow pan across our front lawn, Ethan's chalk drawings still faint on the sidewalk. That night, we got 3 letters in the mail. 2 from neighbors, thanking us for standing up. 1 anonymous, calling me a fool for ever letting her in. And maybe they weren't wrong. The trial was quicker than I expected. Maybe it's because the system had seen her before. Maybe it's because the evidence was so overwhelming, so grotesquely obvious, that even her public defender looked like he wanted to distance himself. Either way, Rachel stood in front of the judge in the same kind of beige jumpsuit she swore she'd never wear again, and listened as her entire plan unraveled in full view. I sat through every hearing, not because I wanted to see her punished, but because I needed the full picture. I needed to hear every ugly word, every piece of the truth, so I could put the damn story to rest in my head. She never looked at me. Not once. Just like at her first trial. All those years ago. The prosecutor laid it out clean. Conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, identity theft, violation of parole, and criminal trespass. Add to that the circumstantial proof of intent to flee the state, emails they recovered about properties in Georgia, cash stashed under her mattress, and her bizarre to-do list titled Clean Exit, No Loose Ends. They had the journal, the fake contracts, the wire transfer history from one of her almost victims, and Vince's testimony, which was a mix of smug bravado and bitter regret, sealed the deal. The judge didn't need long. She was sentenced to 7 years, 5 for the new charges, 2 reinstated from her original parole. No chance of early release this time. No good behavior clause. She left the courtroom without a word, surrounded by marshals, eyes dry, face hollow. I didn't feel relief. I felt empty. Like someone had finally kicked out a squatter in my chest, but left the furniture overturned. After the trial, the detective handed me back the journal. He didn't have to, but he said something like, "Might be good to know what you survived." I read the whole thing that night. Pages and pages of venom. Rage about how I always got the easy life, how I owed her, how the world punished her for being clever. She talked about Megan like she was a parasite, about Ethan like he was some annoying pet I used for sympathy points. And then there was the line that stopped me cold. "You can't let a guy like Derek win. He gets to be the good guy and keep the house? Not this time. I'll take it, sell it, and leave his perfect little life in ashes. It's what he deserves for pretending he's better than me." I closed the journal and threw it into the fire pit in the backyard, watched every page curl and turn black until all that was left was ash and spite. And then, slowly, we started to rebuild. The insurance company approved our claim. Between the physical damage, the break-in, the vandalism, and the stolen property, we got $15,000. It didn't erase what happened, but it paid for a new security system, reinforced doors, and a lawyer to scrub Rachel's ghost out of every database she'd infected. I added a deadbolt to the guest room, not because I expected anyone to stay there again, just because. We started seeing a family counselor. Megan said we needed to talk through what happened, not just push it down. She was right. I'd been walking around with my shoulders clenched for weeks, like the walls might shift again and spit her out. One night, after Ethan was asleep, Megan and I sat out on the porch. She brought wine. I brought silence. "You did everything you could," she said. "You tried to be kind. That's not something to regret." "I let a wolf into our home," I said. "Into our son's home." "She didn't break us," Megan replied. "She didn't even bend us. You stood up to her. You fought. That matters." I wanted to believe it. Still do. The news coverage faded, eventually. Another scam. Another ex-con. Another sad suburban tale. But one story stuck. An op-ed in the local paper, titled, "When Blood Turns Against You." It talked about how family doesn't always mean safety, and how kindness without caution can be a weapon used against you. The writer quoted me from that interview. "She cried, and I wanted to believe the tears were real. That's on me." I didn't respond to the article, didn't correct anything, because it was true. A few weeks later, I got a letter from a woman in Columbus. Said her brother did something similar, stole from her, lied, manipulated their parents. She said watching my story helped her finally cut ties, helped her understand that protecting your peace isn't betrayal. It's survival. That letter's still in my desk drawer. 3 months after the trial, life settled into something that looked like normal. Not the old kind of normal, the innocent kind, but a new version, tougher around the edges, sharper in its awareness. I stopped waiting for surprises to walk through the door. We got better at locking them out. The guest room stayed empty. I thought about turning it into a second office, but that felt like some symbolic overcorrection. Instead, we repainted it. Let Ethan pick the color. He chose bright green, said it looked like the inside of a frog's mouth. It was hideous. It was perfect. We kept the cameras, upgraded the locks, got to know our neighbors better too. Funny how a shared enemy can unite people who barely nodded at each other before. After the news story aired, folks came by with pies, casseroles, even a few apology notes from people who'd assumed I was crazy for going public. The best apology came from our neighbor across the street, Mrs. Walsh. She gave Ethan a toy tool belt and handed me a card that just said, "You don't build a life like this without knowing how to fix it." Megan framed it. We still had repairs to finish. Patches on the garage. A dent in the van I never bothered pulling out. But the damage that lingered wasn't physical. It was the silence. The space where trust used to live. One night, Ethan asked if Aunt Rachel was coming back. "No," I said. "She's gone for good." He nodded. "Okay," he said. She was weird. That was the whole conversation. God, I envied how easy it was for him to move on. But I wasn't there yet. Not fully. I kept thinking about what could have happened if I'd been slower that night. If Vince had swung harder. If the forged documents had gotten one step further. If Rachel had taken not just space, but our name, our safety, our future. And still, part of me wanted to believe she'd meant at least one tear in that diner. The part of me that grew up with her. The part that watched her draw lightning bolts on my notebook and call me Thunderhead. I buried that part with everything else. One morning in late spring, we had a surprise visitor. A young journalist from a local podcast had picked up the case and wanted to do a follow-up interview. Said people wanted to hear more. Not about the crime, but about the recovery. What does rebuilding look like after family betrayal? She asked. We sat in the backyard. Ethan played in the sprinkler. Megan passed out lemonade. "I think people picture forgiveness like a switch," I told her. "You either forgive or you don't. But sometimes it's more like closing a door, not to lock it forever, just so you can stop hearing the echo." She asked me what I'd learned. I thought for a while, then said, "That blood makes you relatives. But behavior? That's what makes someone family." The episode went semi-viral. People messaged, some called, a few even stopped by. Strangers shared their own horror stories, siblings who stole inheritances, uncles who forged deeds, cousins who ran scams. I wasn't alone. None of us were. I kept the email from the podcast host. Printed it out, actually. She wrote, "Your story isn't just about what you lost. It's about what you didn't let go of. Your family, your sanity, your home." She was right. I didn't lose the house. I didn't lose Megan, or Ethan, or who I am. I lost a fantasy. The idea that somewhere under the prison sentence and the fraud and the spite, Rachel still had a heart that looked anything like mine. She didn't. And that's okay. Some things you survive, Some things you walk away from, stronger and meaner and more aware. And some things you torch to the ground and build again, better, uglier, more honest. One last thing. We took a new family photo. Megan framed it and hung it right where the old one used to be. Just the three of us, me, her, Ethan, on the back porch, under the new security lights, grinning like idiots. Only 2 people have keys to the house now, me and Megan. And it's going to stay that way.
This story is not about one scam. It's about a slow invasion, both legal and emotional. It's what happens when trauma is weaponized, when forgiveness becomes a tool for exploitation, and when love blinds us to risk. Derek didn't let a stranger into his home. He let in his sister. And she used that bond to dismantle his life from the inside out. So let's ask the hard questions. How many of us would have done the same? Would you turn away a crying sibling claiming to be reformed? Would you think to consult a lawyer before letting family crash for a few nights? That's where Rachel's power came from. Not force, but assumption. She relied on the fact that family means lowered defenses. And in just 72 hours, she became a guest tenant under Ohio law, a protected status Derek never saw coming. Her manipulation wasn't loud. It was legal. When do red flags stop being warnings and become proof? Was it when she drank beer on the couch like she owned it? When she began showing the house to fake buyers? Or when Derek caught forged sale documents with his name? The real horror wasn't just the scam. It was the realization that this wasn't desperation. It was strategy. Rachel wasn't lost. She was hunting. Her goal wasn't to ask for help. It was to take everything, then disappear. And even after Derek fought back, documenting everything, filing police reports, taking hits, literally, to defend his home, he didn't feel victorious. Why? Because the greatest loss wasn't financial. It was emotional erosion. The place meant to be safest had been turned into a battleground. Never confuse proximity with trust. Blood might open the door, but behavior decides who gets to stay. And if you don't draw the boundary, someone else will, and they'll draw it around your entire life.